Şöyle çıkacağım. Bilgisayarım size olur. Tamam. Toparlıyoruz. 5 dakikamız var.
Değerli misafirlerimiz, Sayın Başbakanımız konuşmasını İngilizce olarak yapacak. O nedenle ihtiyacı olan misafirlerimizin kulaklıklarını Türkiye'den katılımcıların eğer ihtiyaçları varsa kulaklıklarını almalarını rica ederiz. Ladies and gentlemen, speech of our Prime Minister will be in English. Değerli konuklar, lütfen yerlerinizi alalım. Sayın Başbakanım salona girmek üzere. Ladies and gentlemen, please immediately take your seats. Our Prime Minister is about to come. His seat. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, welcome to our conference, second day conference Ladies and gentlemen, Prime Minister of Turkey, Mr. Profesör Doktor Ahmet Davutoğlu, Sayın Başbakanımız. Arkadaşlar, burada fotoğraf almak istiyor fotoğrafçı arkadaşlar. Ön tarafı açabilirsek eğer mümkünse foto muhabiri arkadaşlarımızın çalışabilmeleri için rica edelim. Sayın Başbakanımıza Sayın Lagarde'ın fotoğrafı çekilmekte. Uluslararası Para Fonu direktörü. Evet, foto muhabiri arkadaşlarımıza çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Sayın Başbakanımıza da teşrifleri için çok teşekkür ediyoruz. Sayın Başbakanım, müsaade ederseniz bir aile fotoğrafı alınacak. Onun ardından da toplantımıza başlayacağız. Ladies and gentlemen, now we will have a family photo session. In 1 minute we will finish this session and then we will start our session and the first part of our conference. And the first I will invite Mr. Rifat Sarcıklıoğlu, then we will invite our Prime Minister for his speech. Aile fotoğrafı için başladınız mı?
Başlıyorum.
Evet. The hall is ready.
Sağ tarafı boşaltabilir miyiz? Sağ tarafı.
Sağ tarafı boşaltalım lütfen. Sağ tarafı boşaltalım. Thank you for family photo session. Çok teşekkürler değerli arkadaşlar. Değerli konuk, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, welcome to B20 Turkey conference again, and this is second day of our conference. We had very important speeches yesterday, and today we will continue. And then first of all, I would like to invite Mr. Rifat Sarcıklıoğlu to listen his remarks, and then we will continue with our Prime Minister.
Honorable Prime Minister, dear friends and colleagues, this year Prime Minister Ahmet Davutoğlu centered Turkey's G20 strategic vision on three pillars: implementation, investment, and inclusiveness. Universal progress and prosperity can only be achieved by cooperation. As Prime Minister Davutoğlu stated last year in Australia, history has shown that interconnected and interdependent economies are the best way to achieve peace. Following this guideline, as the B20, we set down 19 recommendations. These recommendations address the issues which businesses and societies face across the world. We believe that these issues define global economy and is key for the business community to move forward. To speak on the global economy as well as the goals of G20 Turkey, I would like to introduce today's guest honor, Prime Minister Ahmet Davutoğlu. Professor Davutoğlu is one of the most outstanding and forward-thinking leaders in the world today. As the head of the region's largest economy, he is also among the most important leaders. And we are lucky to have a business-friendly leader. Educated at Boğaziçi University, Prime Minister Davutoğlu holds advanced degrees in public administration, political science, and international relations. As a former professor, advisor, and Minister of Foreign Affairs, Prime Minister Davutoğlu has been recognized for his unique intelligence and experience. In 2010 and 2011, Foreign Policy magazine named him among the top 100 global thinkers. And as a champion for peace and security in the region, Prime Minister Davutoğlu is widely respected by his fellow leaders. There is perhaps no more qualified to speak on global affairs. I am very honored to present him today. Without further delay, Prime Minister Davutoğlu, the floor is yours. Please.
Distinguished members of B20, respected guests. First, I would like to welcome you all to this important event organized by the Turkish B20 Secretariat. Dear guests, we are going through very historic transformation in global structures. In this transformational area, there is a need of a very close coordination, consultation, and cooperation between policymakers and those who are implementing the decisions of these policymakers. In this sense, an intellectual and operational cooperation between G20 and B20 is essential. G20 is composed of policymakers, leaders of 20 most advanced economies of the world. And B20 is the leaders of the business community, those who are guiding, implementing all these decisions before and after the process. This close cooperation is a must. Otherwise, either the decisions of political leaders will not be implemented in proper manner, or the objectives of business leaders will not be heard by political leaders. Therefore, this meeting during the Turkish presidency of G20 for us is very, very important before Antalya summit. We want to hear your voice. We want to listen your concerns, your objectives, your future plan. And we want you to listen us, to understand how we are approaching the questions, which type of challenges and risks we are thinking, we are projecting for the future. So if it is a process, G20 and B20, there is a link, input, decisions, and feedback. Your input will help us as the political leaders to understand the real situation in financial, economic structures of the world, and we will take our decisions based on your pragmatic, practical suggestions, and our decisions will be recorrected or revised based on your feedbacks after these decisions being implemented. Therefore, this relation is not just a technical process, but it is more a process of joint effort and joint work shoulder to shoulder for the future of humanity. I especially underline the future of humanity because there is no economic or political activity independent of and from the destiny of humanity. Therefore, first I want to give you a picture of global order or disorder today and try to frame a structure. Why Turkey preferred these three concepts, inclusiveness, implementation, and investment, as the main agenda of Turkish presidency. We have to see the reality, respected guests. Today is an era of crisis. Crisis does not mean always problems, but it also means, at the same time, some opportunities. It depends on our timely decisions whether this crisis will be transformed into a success story or a real problem for the future of humanity. When we look at quarter of a century, 25 years after Cold War era, I always underline that after Cold War, there have been three basic challenges, or I use the analogy of earthquakes, because aftershocks and before shocks of earthquake are important to understand. The first one was in 1990s, geopolitical earthquake or challenge, which changed all the stable, but at the same time stagnant geopolitics of Eurasia. We faced many problems in Balkans, in Caucasia, in Central Asia, in Africa in those years. But the world economy was booming. EU was integrated, European markets were transformed into a single market, and there were geopolitical challenges, but the economy, world economy, at early 1990s were in the era of growth. The second biggest challenge was, or earthquake, was 9/11, security earthquake, which changed all the concepts of security after the terrorist threat. And therefore, we faced many wars, tensions, geopolitical confrontations in last 15 years after 9/11 to fight against terror, but at the same time to fight against the situations of failing states. The third biggest earthquake was in 2008, an economic earthquake, which has shaken all the basic structures of world economy. Not only global economy, but national economies face problems. It started as a financial crisis, continued as an economic crisis, then a social crisis after unemployment, a political crisis in several European countries, unstable governments, and later a European crisis, a global crisis as well. And despite of the recovery in advanced economies, we should not be thinking that the aftershocks of global economic crisis has ended. Now, we are in a situation where all these three challenges are still on board. Geopolitical tensions, we have crisis in Ukraine, we had crisis before in 2008 in Georgia, now we face problems in Ukraine, which we were thinking after 1990s that now there is a new Europe, but the problem is right at the neighborhood of New Europe. And after Arab Spring, we have failing states. Around Turkey now, there are 6 states where the central government doesn't have control over the whole territory of the country, as well as over all the economy. And we are facing ideological confrontations, religious-based, sectarian-based confrontations, and security challenges, geopolitical tensions, economic crisis are together, functioning together, which is a big threat for all of us and big threat for the humanity. I am here warning not only the leaders, but also all the segments of societies. We should not forget that Second World War did emerge when there was a global economic crisis in 1929 and ideological confrontations of fascism and also some geopolitical tensions and the concept of geopolitics did emerge in those years. If geopolitical tension, political instability, economic decline, stagnation, and ideological confrontations are together, then we must be very careful and we must act timely. Otherwise, there could be several bad scenarios in front of us. Therefore, it is a historic time today for all the world leaders, not only 20 leaders of G20, but for all the world leaders to unite against geopolitical ambitions, ideological confrontation, youth unemployment, which is the biggest source of all these instabilities. If young generation, which I will come, it is one of the agenda of Turkish presidency, if in a country there is a high youth unemployment, you could expect any type of ideological confrontations and a suitable base for terrorism. This is a big challenge for all of us. As Turkish presidency, we are well aware of this. Now, based on this, when we look at the G20 as a global crisis resolution platform, what we need today is an integrated, coordinated, inclusive, and effective approach. It must be integrated because this crisis in front of us is not a crisis of one segment of society or international community. We have to integrate our strategies. It has to be coordinated. Nobody is immune of any crisis, global economic or political crisis today. We have to coordinate our policies, our approaches. It has to be inclusive. I will come to this concept. The basic core concept of Turkish presidency is inclusivity. And I will make emphasis on this concept more and more in my speech today. And effective. It should not be only decisions on the paper, but effectiveness is important. And here, we need to respond to economic crisis based on these joint efforts. G20 is a platform which is now today a hope for all these crises because unfortunately, today P5 as permanent members of UN Security Council they are not acting in responding to the crisis in an effective manner, and it is not very inclusive structure. G20 is much more inclusive, representing much bigger population of the world, and therefore there is a hope that G20 can be a base not only for financial issues, but all those sources of conflict, financial, economic, political, social, and therefore the G20 summits are the platforms where all these issues being discussed. And here, collective action for inclusive and robust growth is important. I want to underline here especially 5 big challenges in front of us regarding global economy. One is global financial markets today are highly volatile and new risks are facing. Volatility is the basic problems in front of business community as well as world leaders. When there is a volatility, it is difficult to make future plans, not long-term plans, even short-term plans being affected by these volatilities. We have to be sure that the predictability of world economy is possible. Also, another challenge today is emerging markets are generally far from demonstrating their past dynamism. There is a recovery of advanced economies. We observe this and this is a good indication. But without dynamism of emerging markets, it is difficult to increase the growth. We know advanced economies, after successful decades, now they cannot make this dynamism without the contribution of emerging markets. And third, weak prospects for future growth. Last year in Brisbane, we have decided that the growth of G20 will be, total global growth of G20 will be reached to 2%. But now these targets are difficult to be achieved. We have to have a new prospect for future growth. Therefore, we are emphasizing as Turkey on investment. Without investment, there cannot be growth. Also, global trade is unexpectedly slowing down. Trade is the locomotive of all these economic prospects. And the reversal of capital flows to emerging market economies is also another fourth biggest challenge. Another challenge, which is important, not directly economic, but affecting economies, is, as I mentioned, geopolitical tension. For example, today as Turkey, we are trying to increase our economic growth, and in last 12 years, our per capita income has increased 4 times, GDP as well. But we had a trade strategy to diversify our export markets, EU, neighborhood, Middle East, Balkans, Central Asia, Caucasia. When there was a crisis in EU, we had a strategy, a very consistent, effective strategy to increase our trade with the neighborhood. And from 2002 until 2013, we increased our export to trade to neighborhood from 8% to 30% almost. Then we shifted our attention to Africa when there was a crisis in neighborhood, and Latin America and Far East. Neighborhood is important for all economies, but especially for Turkey, which is right at the center of Europe, Asia, and Africa. But today, as I mentioned, there are 6 countries, I don't want to give the names of the countries, at least 6, 7, which are not fragile countries, but where central governments are not able to control the whole economy, like Syria, like Iraq, like Libya. Today, Prime Minister of Tripoli government is here, like Ukraine. These countries were the leading export markets for Turkey. And this is not only an economic problem, geopolitical tensions creating political problems, economic problems, but more humanitarian problems. I am sure all of you have seen the picture of a dead body of Aylan, 3 years old Syrian baby, not even a child. That dead body is a warning signal to all of us. If Syrian children are not safe in their home, be sure that none of our children will be safe in Ankara, Paris, London, or New York. Because those children, they did not decide themselves where they would be born. It is their destiny, where they were born. But it is our decisions or false decisions what would be their future. For the last 4 years, as Turkey, we have been raising our voice, trying to get the attention of the world that there is a humanitarian crisis in Syria, that millions of refugees, millions of children, ladies, old people, they are victims of an oppressor, of a regime, as well as of terrorist organizations. I am proud here to be Prime Minister of a country and of a nation who received 1.7 million Syrian refugees and around 200,000 Iraqis, altogether 2 million refugees who are our brothers and sisters and will continue to be so. Turkish economy is not a big economy like some advanced economies or some very natural resource-wise very rich countries. We are spending billions of dollars now, more than $6 billion in the last 4 years, from the taxes of our business people, of our laborers, workers, farmers. We are spending for refugees from Syria and Iraq. And in some Turkish towns, like Kilis, neighboring town to Syria, the Turkish citizens are now less than Syrian refugees in this city. 54% of Kilis population are Syrians today. And you did not see any demonstration, provocative demonstration against these migrants. While in Europe today, unfortunately, we are observing some leaders writing articles or making speeches that Europe is a Christian continent and Muslims should not be there. While Turkey received millions of Syrians without asking who they are, Muslim or Christian, Arab, Kurd, or Turkoman, Sunni or Shiite. All they came to Turkey as a safe haven, like those who escaped in the 15th century from Europe, Jewish community against genocide, and or many other people in the past. I can assure you, whatever happens around us, whichever risks are emerging, when these children came to us, when these victims of oppressors approach to our borders will be open to them. Our doors will be open. But more important, our hearts will be open to all victims of these tragedies. Respected guests, please just imagine for a second. Yesterday around midnight, I called Abdullah Kurdi, who was guest of our party branch in Muğla, the father of Aylan, this 3-year-old boy. Abdullah al-Kurdi, he came to Turkey and tried to escape from Syria and tried to establish a new future for him, for his wife, Zahim, and for his 2 boys, Aylan and Gail. But he lost his wives and 2 children. He escaped from Syria as a family, and now he's returning to his town, Kobani, back as an individual. Just imagine, if you lost all the family, what would be happening in your deep psyche, and which type of risks you are facing. I am calling again from here, from Ankara, from the capital city of a country, now the biggest recipient of migrants, refugees in the world, according to UN statistics. I am calling all world leaders, all responsible intellectuals, all business communities, all those who are now making holidays in resorts and other places in a very comfortable manner. Please just think about the refugees, not only from Syria, from Africa, from other countries. We have to have an integrated strategy. We have to fight against oppression. We have to defend the rights of humanity wherever they are, from whichever religion they are belonging, and we have to be shoulder to shoulder as humanity. This is a time where all of us would be being tested in the face of these historic turning points. We hope that this voice and this dead body of a child will be seen by all international community, and UN Security Council will take a decision how to protect Syrian people in Syria. For the last 4 years, before as Minister of Foreign Affairs and now as Prime Minister and our President, all of us, we tried to convince world leaders that there is a need of a safe haven inside Syria where refugees can stay in their home, where there wouldn't be huge numbers of migrants. But nobody heard our voice. They thought maybe that we are thinking for our national security. No, Turkey can protect herself. We can protect our border. We can protect, and everybody has seen that if needed, we've punished Daesh and PKK and all terrorists. Those who have any bad thinking about Turkey, we can protect ourselves. But who will protect Syrian people? We have been warning for 4 years that issues like Srebrenica will be happening if there is no safe haven in Syria. Today, it is time to act together. It is not only a geopolitical issue, as I said. Last year in Brisbane, in our leaders' meeting, in my address, I said that the best way to achieve peace is interdependent economies, as President of TOP, Rufat Bey, has mentioned. Yes, economy is the best way for peace, but economic decline is the most suitable instrument for political crisis and humanitarian crisis. It is time for all of us to act together. From here, I will come to 3 basic objectives and principles of Turkish presidency. One is inclusiveness. If there is such a crisis, the remedy of this crisis is inclusivity. We have to act together in an inclusive manner. We should not be isolating any segment of humanity based on their religious, continental, ethnic, or sectarian identity. Inclusivity is a principle of mentality, but also an operational principle as well. Today we need an inclusive global order, an inclusive UN Security Council, an inclusive UN mechanism, an inclusive G20, an inclusive international global economic order, and an inclusive global cultural order. If you isolate a culture, then those members of those cultures would be a target of terrorist organizations. Or if you exclude African continent from economic recovery or economic developments, a dynamic population of humanity would be out of global economic order. Therefore, inclusivity for us is a basic principle, and in Turkish presidency, we will focus, more and more focus on this principle. We are aware that a significant part of the population has not yet participated in the economic global recovery. We have to make all humanity, all continents, parts of economic developments and economic strategies for strong, sustainable, and balanced growth. The need to address the quality of growth rather than just quantitative growth. The numbers, statistics are not important if the quality of growth is not achieved. Therefore, we have to focus on the income share of labor for the first time in G20, and also emphasizing issues pertaining to the small and medium-sized enterprises. So, income share of labor and SMEs, small and medium-sized enterprise, has been and will be in the main agenda of G20 during Turkish presidency. The SMEs are very important to share the benefits of economic growth throughout the society. It is important nationwide because these SMEs, especially in developing countries where we do not have big companies, global-sized companies, there is a need of support SMEs in order to diversify economy, in order to fight against unemployment through boosting employment, to increase competitiveness and growth, and also to increase innovation capacity. This is important, and during our presidency in several fora, we discussed the challenges in front of SMEs, which type of alternative financing models we can develop for SMEs, very important. In Turkey, we have observed this change, and in several Anatolian towns in the last 20 years, SMEs became the locomotive of economic growth. When we look at the countries where there is a problem of unemployment, you would see that SMEs in those countries are not functional and operational. So for national economies, SMEs are important. For global economy, SMEs are important because economic justice could be achieved only through small and medium-sized enterprise. Big companies, they can survive, they can function global-wide, but for global justice in economic sense, SMEs are very important, and therefore I am proud that we have launched the World SME Forum in Istanbul with the International Chamber of Commerce, and we are grateful to the International Chamber of Commerce for their cooperation. And this forum will be a conduit between the expectations and concerns of the SMEs and the G20 and B20. As the leaders of global business community, I want to call all of you to support this initiative of SME in order to make the benefit of global economy shared by all countries and by all segments of the society. Another important area where this concept of inclusivity is becoming very important and operational is relations between G20 and LIDCs, low-income developing countries. Turkey is the coordinator country for LDCs until 2020, and during our presidency, this relation between G20, the most advanced economies of the world, and the least developed countries is an ethical responsibility, but also important for global economy. If we want to increase trade, how can we increase trade? Only through increasing per capita income of low LIDCs. In advanced economies, the consumption has a limit, while in Africa, in Latin America, in certain countries, in Pacific islands, in several other places where LIDCs are, the economic boom will create the rise of demands, and that will help the emerging markets as well as advanced economies. And in this regard, our finance ministers come together with the LIDC's ministers and have frank dialogue in Washington. This is very important. I think this has to continue. If finance minister of G20 do not understand the problems of the least developed countries, low-income countries, it is difficult to run the global economy. And it is impossible to prevent migration. History is teaching us. When Roman Empire, as a rising empire, after 2-3 centuries, all those where Romans conquered, people came to Rome. And Rome became really, in those years, a global city where Persians, Egyptians, Anatolians, many people are, because this is a lesson of the history. If there is an economic growth and concentration in an area of the world, and if other parts do not have such an opportunity, there will be a move and migration from those regions to the center of economic activities. If you say all roads lead to Rome, then all people will come to Rome. If you say that there is a Eurocentric economy, then in next phase, from other continents, people will try to be in Europe. The remedy is help other countries so that their people will be happy in their own country. Otherwise, it will be a humanitarian tragedy if we do not have such an inclusive approach when there are protests against migrants. And this will change the atmosphere of international peace as well. So in our presidency, we will continue to focus on relations between G20 and LIDC. The second principle is implementation. As Minister of Foreign Affairs and later as Prime Minister, I have attended several tens, hundreds of meetings where there has been many good speeches, commitments, verbal commitments, certain decisions undersigned, certain decisions declared in a very high manner. But if those decisions, those speeches, those commitments are not being implemented, then they are meaningless. I remember how many meetings have been conducted to help Palestinian people. How many billions of dollars were committed them? None of them were paid. After every crisis, there is a donor conference. Then we realize that those decisions are not being implemented. In economic sense as well. I remember, and last year in Brisbane, all the leaders, we were around the same table, and we emphasized jointly certain problems, like acting against protectionism and making free transfer of goods and financial assets. But in last 1 year, I am observing that protective measures are increasing rather than decreasing regarding trade. Or there has been last year again, we have decided together that growth strategies will be coordinated so that collective growth will be reached to 2% by 2018. But we are observing that every country has its own growth strategy, sometimes conflicting with other individual decisions. If we are in the same train, in the same boat, we should be accepting that if that boat sinks, all of us will be affected. Nobody can be safe. Today, world economy is integrated, and we have to be acting together regarding implementation of our decisions. Here, I want to emphasize another issue. Responding to short-term crisis, especially short-term financial crisis, is a compulsory duty. We cannot avoid. If there is a short-term crisis, you have to respond to that crisis. But if you only focus on short-term crisis, forgetting long-term strategies and preemptive and proactive economic strategies to prevent further economic crisis, then you will be like fighting against fire, you will be only responding and reacting. What we need is not a reactive economic strategy, but preemptive economic strategy. Not only responding to short-term problems, which we have to, but also long-term structural reforms. Again, last year in Brisbane, we have decided to support, to develop and to encourage everybody, all the member countries, to make structural reforms. But only 2 or 3 countries, including Turkey, declared an integrated structural reform strategy. Last year, in November and December, we declared 25 areas of transformation in order to guarantee the future of our economic, sustainability of our economic growth. And we declared 1,350 actions in the structural reforms. I can assure you, since as presidency we have been underlining the importance of implementation, all those areas of transformation will be implemented in an appropriate manner. We had a democratic election on 7th of June. As the chairman of the biggest party, I tried to form a coalition in the last 3 months. Unfortunately, we were not able to form. We will be going to another election, and now we have an election cabinet, but in our first meeting last Monday, I told to all the ministers coming from different parties that this government could be seen as a temporary government to go to the elections, but we will be acting as if we are a permanent government for 4 years. And in our first meeting, we have taken certain decisions showing that our cabinet will be acting based on long-term objectives of Turkish economy and politics. So these structural reforms in Turkey will be continuing. Here, again, as I mentioned before, youth employment is important as the main problem of social disturbance as well as political instability. And G20 labor ministers meeting in that sense is very important for us. During Turkish presidency, we have G20 finance ministers meeting, labor ministers meeting, energy ministers meeting, and we thought that G20 is like one country, one global country is running the global economy. We try to have a platform of as many ministers as possible. Lastly, investment. 3 I's: inclusivity, implementation, and investment. Investment is the basic, powerful driver of growth. If there is no investment, there cannot be employment. If there is no employment, there cannot be social stability. If there is no social stability, there cannot be political stability for the future. When you look, again, I don't want to give, many of them are our neighbors, some countries facing economic problems. You can see that they just acted as a service economy without a real proper investment. After a while, they collapsed because of the absence of real economy producing job opportunity for their society. In last 7 years, Turkish economy created around 6 million new jobs. And I am grateful to Turkish business community because of their dynamic approach. During global economic crisis, they invested more and more, and they produced more job opportunities. And with this close cooperation between Turkish government and Turkish business community, we will be able to increase our investment and to fight against unemployment. Here, what we need to do to support, to encourage investment is that, especially 3 instruments. One is deepening capital markets development, focusing on alternative instruments, and designing effective PPP, public-private partnership models are considered. These three instruments might create a new boost in investment. So in Antalya, in Turkish presidency, in our summit, all these issues will be discussed. But the first is, more important, is our basic approach, as our mentality, how we see these interrelated challenges to each other. Therefore, inclusivity is important. We will see and we will ask all the leaders to work together to implement our joint decisions. And we will raise the issue how we can increase our investments. Not only investments of G20, but how can we support investments in other countries, especially in LIDCs. Respected guests, as I underlined in the first phase of my speech, we are going through a historic transformation in these years and decades. If we act together for the future of humanity, I can assure you next generations will be having a better world. But if we have an egoistic approach, thinking only our countries, or our business community, or our political future in these countries, all of us, we will be losing. There is no third option, either win-win or lose-lose. In Turkish presidency, we will be calling all countries, all business leaders, civil society leaders, and all the leaders of the world economy that we should be together for win-win scenario. And I am sure with the support of B20, this win-win scenario will be possible. Thank you very much for your contribution and for your meeting in Turkey. Thank you very much.
Blessed lands that witness the birth of civilizations, ascension of empires, and most magnificent scenes of humankind's history. The center of development, Anatolia was a center of trade and civilization, where men lived in prosperity for thousands of years. A passing point for the Silk Road, the Spice Road, and many other trade roads. This is Turkey, a country of intersection for climates, continents, civilizations, tourism, and trade. Turkey, a country of opportunities, growth, and potential. 16th greatest economy in the world. 6th greatest economy in Europe. Aiming to become the 10th greatest economy in the world. Aiming to reach a mark of 2 trillion national income by 2023. Aiming to achieve an average income of $25,000 per person. Aiming to have $500 billion in export annually. Aiming to create global Turkish brands. With its young population and spirit of global integrated entrepreneurship, Turkey is a shining star of the region. Largest financial center of Eurasia. Country where the heart of trade beats. Place of civilizations coming together. Regional center of fascination. Global power. In the past, present, and future days. A great market of technology, money, and finance. a strategic partner of global markets. Productive, transparent, trustworthy, and full of opportunities. Turkey is like an ancient bridge that stretches out with an unshakable magnificence between civilizations and people. Built on lands that were home to such civilizations as Hittites, Phrygians, Lydians, Assyrians, Lycians, Ionians, and such empires as Byzantine and Ottoman. With an administrative distribution among 81 cities, 850 districts, and over 35,000 villages, with a young and dynamic population of nearly 77 million citizens, Turkey commits to the future with these characteristics. A foreign trade volume of $350 billion. Turkey is an economic bridge, transfers energy resources from east to west, provides goods and services to all corners of the world with its world-class industrialists, contractors, and trade professionals. 2014 growth rate, 3%. Turkey successfully carries its spectacular experience accumulated throughout ages to modern times. Currently, its economy is among the fastest developing countries in the world. 61 technology development zones. Turkey is one of the countries providing the most generous support to world's technology development zones. One of the 6 countries producing unmanned air vehicles. $27 million tourists a year. Millions of foreign tourists come to Turkey every year because of its exceptionally rich cultural heritage, colorful nature, winter and summer tourism opportunities. Being a country that caught the level of its civilization with all these characteristics, Turkey continues to make steps towards development, strives to utilize its resources in the most productive manner, and a progressively important place in the world with each passing day. We invite you to the world's financial bridge from west to east, to potential, to future, to benefit. We invite you to Turkey. Turkey is center for regional power and global attraction, a place where continents come together.